Will anyone travel from a ludicrous distance to be with us tonight? Paran. That's not really much of an effort, but thank you anyway. Down the front. You came from Sydney. Oh, thank you so much. I hope we make it worth your while as the evening drags on.
Thank you, Frente, for your rendition of our theme, and welcome to episode 21 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show of the 90s ever made, The Late Show, and other D-Generation comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining this podcast today is Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Prue.
Hello!
everyone.
And we've actually got a very jam-packed show for you on this podcast. I was going to say tonight, but it depends on whenever you're listening. We actually got a really cool, major special guest. And that is Piss Week Kid and foolhardy cousin George himself, Justin Anderson.
Hey.
So you finally got my check and you cashed it. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, so I don't know really where to start because obviously...
Starstruck.
Yeah. So we do have Charlie the Wonder Dog episode in this episode of Season 2, Episode 1 of The Late Show. But yeah, like obviously you've done other stuff with your acting career other than, actually was The Late Show your first type of gig or did you have anything beforehand?
I'd done a few little bits and pieces. Funnily enough, I'd just been fired from the second series of Round the Twist when I actually got picked up by The Late Show. Really weird little story there.
Wow.
I'd been cast as Tiger in the second season of Round the Twist, and due to some, conflict with other cast members, I was let go from that project and promptly picked up by The Late Show just before they started. And then following that was another equally piss week TV series called Sky Trackers, which thankfully has gone and disappeared. And there is far more piss week acting in that than I ever did in The Late Show, I can tell you that. Please don't look for it, it's terrible.
Because, the first time we would have seen you on The Late Show would have been as that group of hapless customers of the various Piss Week worlds.
That's right, yeah.
How were those sketches sort of sold to you or your parents, as an acting gig?
Well, the woman at the very beginning of the first Piss Week world is actually my mum. So,
the woman who's continually nodding to camera.
That's it. That's my mum. So she dropped us off for the thing because we were all underage, and the two boys in that as well are my brothers. And she dropped us off and we're sitting there waiting for things to go on, and they needed someone, so they put my mum in. And my dad pops up in Piss Week Air World. Wearing an Essendon footy jumper and spinning us around in the Hills Hoist. He just happened to be there at the time, so yeah, everyone's all been pretty fun with it.
And your younger brother, which is
Nick, and Luke, and my other brother Luke as well. They were in Piss Week World, and Nick followed on and went into Charlie the Wonder Dog, and I'm sure everyone remembers in Dickhead Tonight as well. He was he was in that one too.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get it straight into the actual show because we've still got a lot to cover here. Yep. And we have... And regular contributor Peter Phoebe actually wants to say that in the final episode of Season 1, where we actually talk about the E Street competition, the clip that Tommy G had actually spliced into the commercial where the house blows up, he just wants to say that it's from the footage. The footage is from the movie What About Bob, starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss. So that kind of... Yep, that's done. Also, we actually have a very late entry to the Piss Week quote competition. It's kind of over now, so we're already giving the prize away. But this one...
Just play it anyway, Matt.
Yeah.
Charlie the Wonder Dog, starring Charlie the Wonder Dog, the Piss Week Kids, and Charles Bud Tingwell as Gramps.
That was Alex. So good on you, Alex, for sending it in.
Nice work,
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, it's just pure coincidence that's in time for this episode. And one more thing, in regards to season 1, episode 17, when Santo was playing the Santo the Lover, when he was serenading the audience member, by Twitter confession, that was Marique Hardy, who says that she was obsessed with the show, and it was definitely her. She also appears as an extra in a future sketch, Kelvin, son of Melvin, son of Alvin. So the Warren Perso sketch. So we got to look out for that when it gets closer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing.
All right, so let's roll straight into it. And we have Daniel G's program guide. And before you say anything, I've actually got a little sting.
All in this week's TV Week, packed with great entertainment. Out now.
Well, I love it. Even though I don't use the TV Week for the guides, I still love it. And yeah, there's a fair bit of interesting stuff in the Saturday TV guide for 5th of June 93. And this is all taken from a critical guide to the weekend's TV, which means that Ross Warneke gets to put his comments next to the listings. So we'll start with Channel 7. At 6:30, they had a film called To Grandmother's House We Go. Runaway twins, played by Ashley and Mary-Kate Olsen, encounter kidnappers posing as Santa's elves. I don't know if that's their first filmic role, but yeah, they would have been very popular in Full House at the time. And then at 8:30, AFL State of Origin final. Victoria versus South Australia at the MCG. SA defeated Victoria 109-97.
Yay.
I know, yay us.
Go footy.
Go sports.
Yeah.
On Channel 9, we had Hey Hey It's Saturday at 6:30. I couldn't find information about any guests, so I'm going to guess that they didn't have any guests at all. And that was followed at 8:30 by delayed coverage of the morning session of the third day of the first test of England versus Australia at the Ashes from Old Trafford. Quite helpfully, Warneke puts in that you can listen to live coverage on 3LO from 7:10. So there you go, plugging the radio in the TV guide for some weird reason. And in the event of rain, you would have seen the film Cat Ballou, followed by sports specials. So I don't know if it rained, because I know as much about sport as everybody else here, which I think is not much. All right, on Channel 10, I found this quite interesting. At 6:30, the first of a 2-part documentary series in which Steve and Terry Irwin searched the Australian outback for new specimens for their Queensland fauna park. The Crocodile Hunter Goes West.
Wow.
I don't know if that's one of their first, but I'd say it's definitely before they became really famous. At 7:30, an episode of Murder, She Wrote, and then at 8:30, Kojak. When Blake is framed for murder, Kojak goes on the warpath, searching for a connection between some Colombian killers, a prominent shrink, and a corrupt city commissioner. Then over on SBS, I found this quite interesting as well. At 8 o'clock, they played a repeat of a British sitcom called Drop the Dead Donkey. It's a British sitcom set in a TV newsroom, and had a quite novel thing at the time where they would incorporate the headlines of the day into the script. It is a repeat, so I don't know how old the news would have been, but yeah, I find it interesting that SBS would play something like that, you know, basically because I don't think any other channel would have played it really. And then at 8:30, they had a German drama series called The Second Heimat. When I get to anything on SBS, usually it's in black and white. It doesn't look like this is in black and white, but I've got no idea what this is actually about. So this is just the description. Herman and Schnuschen find it hard to make ends meet after having a baby despite Herman's graduation, starring Henry Arnold and Salome Kammer. And we now get to the ABC. Now, previously for the lead-ins, we've had Smith & Jones, we've had Alexi Sale, and we've had the drama comedy Bread. And it now gives me pleasure to tell you that we now have as a lead-in Birds of a Feather.
Yeah. With only dreams of you that won't come true. What'll I do?
So there we go.
Lovely.
Warneke helpfully says that this is an okay British sitcom.
That is accurate. That is accurate.
What is less accurate is that they say that it stars Linda Robson and Pauline Clark when they mean Pauline Quirk.
Oh, no.
No.
And it's the adventures of two sisters and their man-loving neighbour. Wasn't Dorian such a I've forgotten the phrase now. I was going to say dozy cow, but that's not the one.
She was a MILF. They didn't have MILFs in the 90s, but she was definitely a MILF, wasn't she?
Yeah, definitely before her time. Yeah. And it was season 1, episode 5. Which is from 1989, actually, so it took a while to get here, and as far as I can tell, there's no R next to the listing, so, yeah, there you go. Now, when it gets to the listing for The Late Show itself, there's a couple of firsts here, actually. For select items in the program guide, Ross Warnocky puts a box around it to say that it's something recommended, and he also puts a star inside one of the boxes saying that it's pick of the night. And it turns out that The Late Show is the pick of the night.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
He's
Wow.
He must have had a heart attack doing that.
he's changed, definitely. Like, the
You've changed, Ross.
the tide has definitely turned. I think it might have also helped that there was sport on 2 of the channels as well. Because, like, 9 times out of 10, it's usually been movies. It's usually been something foreign and black and white on SBS. Whereas, if you didn't really, feel like sport, then, you would probably go for The Late Show. In his description, he says that it's the first of a new season of the Melbourne-produced sketch comedy series featuring the D-Gen. Often tasteless, usually outrageous, and at its best, absolutely hilarious.
Oh, my God.
What is he on?
What is it?
That's a positive review.
Like, he was singing a different tune.
Wow, someone got to him.
Exactly. He's not the only one, because Robin Oliver in the Sydney Morning Herald, just to diverge quickly, he did a little review of it, even though the first episode hadn't gone to air. He put a little review in the Sydney Morning Herald saying that the ABC has carved a niche for itself with late-night comedy on Friday and Saturday nights, and the extra oomph it provides by having the courage to run these programs live gives them an interesting edge. After a burst of somewhat unnecessary best-of blasts from the past, The Late Show returns tonight live from the ABC studios at Elstonwick. While I have been critical of this program and have advocated a little discipline in performance, it is good to discover that the ABC has been thinking along the same lines. The Late Show's hump was the requirement to fill a complete hour, a difficult task that risked overstretching a young company. Consider Full Frontal, which runs 47 minutes plus commercials. But was also done mischief by having to follow Smith and Jones, leaving viewers overdosed on sketch humour. The 1 hour problem also causes stretch marks to regularly show with Live and Sweaty. The Late Show has now been trimmed to 50 minutes, maybe allowing the excellent Graham and the Colonel to be introduced to just the sort of discipline I had in mind. Longer is not necessarily funnier. I'm wishing them well, looking forward to seeing Judith Lucy join the cast and help the sometimes lonely Jane Kennedy in a male-dominated show.
Sometimes lonely Jane Kennedy. Ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that's something we could probably talk about when Judith Lucy gets introduced. He also adds that he wishes that he could sit in on the weekly 8:30 rehearsal when the company runs through the entire show for the benefit of its lawyers. Talk about a white-knuckle brigade. These legal eagles must be a sight to see. All right. Sorry, and just after The Late Show, if you've had all of that comedy and want more, there's a docudrama called Countdown to War that comes on at 11 o'clock. Based on the official records, diaries and memoirs of the war cabinets in Chamberlain's England, Stalin's Russia, and Mussolini's Italy, and Hitler's Germany. Again, I'm thinking about that sketch, Watch Out, Hitler's About. Then at 12:30, this is something new for 93, the ATVI News. Does anybody remember what ATVI is?
Oh, that's the international service of the ABC, isn't it? Which was broadcasting to Asia, I believe.
That's right. So that had just launched in February 93. And it's gone through all these different name changes, and it was even owned by Channel 7 at one point, but it's still going strong now. It's known as ABC Australia. So you got to see the news going out to the Asia Pacific at 12:30, followed by Rage at 1 o'clock, with Michael Jackson.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Just quickly, Matt, I noticed you did play the TV Week ad earlier. I do have some clippings that I adorned my Year 11 folder with. I think I've shown this to you before, but the TV Week program guide actually had returning Saturday Laugh-In. Saturday nights will be livelier with the return of topical humour from the wacky D generation in the Late Show. And then they said the whole team is back, and they just listed all the cast members aside from Judith. And I photocopied that and put it on my folder in Year 11 because I didn't want to put the original on there, of course. But I did put the original ad for in the TV guide for the Late Show, which is the strip that happens at the end of the program guide, and I put that on the cover of my binder. So there you go.
Old school cool right there, Kim.
I'll tell you what else is new for 93, actually. When the episode starts, you get the, this program is rated M, contains adult humour. And I think the Keating government brought in this rating system in 93, didn't they? And this is the first time we've seen it on The Late Show, potentially, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it definitely looks new to me when I look at season 2. I remember being very excited, thinking, I am actually old enough to watch this.
Yeah, adult humour,
All right. Well, before we hop into it, I might as well play. This would go just before the M-rated warning, but I've got a little grab of what would be the behind the scenes, the warm up of the Late Show that doesn't go to air. The person who supplied this is Late Show fan Alan Waddell. He had a satellite off-site recording of them doing a warm-up, and it went for a little bit, but I've got a clip here, which the clip that I played at the very beginning of this episode was actually part of it, where Tom was talking to the audience. Now, this is a continuation where he talks to Tony, and then Tony plays some bloopers. Now, he ends up playing 2 bloopers from 2 TV shows, but the second one he actually played on the Mick Malloy show years later on, where the beer sculling happens. But this one, well, I'll let Tony explain it.
To get you in the mood for the sparkling entertainment, we've got some golden moments from Australian television to share with you. A lot of these come from the personal archives of Mr. Tony Martin. So, Tony, could you talk us through them?
Yes, are we all fans of Uncle Harry from the Sullivans? Remember his work? We've got a great outtake from the Sullivans here. Now, just before you started upstairs, keep an eye on Terry at the very back there, because he actually electrocutes himself on the toaster, and watch how Uncle Harry reacts.
Still, that is still not fixed. That is the 3rd time, Barney. 3rd fucking time. When is that gonna be done? Fuck me. Fuck me, man. That stinks.
Good advice there. Don't you wish you'd be more like that on the Sullivans? Nah, fuck this war, Dave. Fucking sick of Hitler.
So Crawford's DVD, I hope those bloopers are on the Sullivan's box set that you keep advertising.
Fair enough, Michael Caton going off his lolly there, because, I mean, electrocuting the actors, fuck that shit.
And that man became Dale Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are they using a real toaster? Why hasn't Equity, sort of said, excuse me, we don't think you should be using real electrical equipment on this program.
Especially ones with live wires.
Yeah. What the hell's going on?
I hate to know if anything existed, like was turned on during the Piss Week World sketches, mate.
No, they didn't trust us with anything, not even actual real scripts. So no, nothing was left on. And the episode where poor old Bud burnt the place down, I don't even think that was a real cigarette. No, I think it was. He definitely didn't smoke it, though.
All right, now we get into Season 2, Episode 1 of The Late Show, broadcast Saturday, June 5th, 1993. And we have the musical opening that everyone is so familiar with.
We're still number 4. We're still number 4.
Yeah, and so forth. Which is a piss take of Channel 9's.
Excellent appeal. Yeah, we're still together. So special.
And an exciting new year, still bringing you the best. This is the 9 Network.
And you're still the one.
Channel.
Yeah, while Channel 9 have many various versions, that was the one that I found that was around 1993.
Doesn't that take you back? Because they don't really do that sort of big network promo that they would usually do at the start of the year, where all the stars get together and go, you know, we're all here, we're all together, watch us, we're great. Yeah, the ABC's version takes the piss so well.
It does.
I remember like watching this episode, The Late Show, and I just thought, what an amazing start to a new series. What a perfect way to introduce this new series. It was just brilliant, that sketch, and it still holds up, and I still laugh at it. And yeah, peerless.
I know, it's got that real signposting of this is going to be big, you know, and it really was like, oh, like this isn't what it was last year. This is really professional. And also it's got a lot of celebrities in it, the celebrities of a particular flavour, which are funny, like Simon Townsend and the guy from that cooking show whose name I can't remember, Ian Parmenter. With the carrots.
Yeah. And Michael Tunn from the afternoon show. I remember he was always good just before Degrassi High.
As well as Eden Gahar before he had his hand up a cow's ass, so that was years ago.
That poor guy, I had so many rumours about him.
Sorry, that was a Martin Malloy reference. And also Tim Bowden, Peter Ross, and the Behind the News guy, as well as George Negus.
I couldn't think of what his name was.
He's on the...
Oh, yeah,
weather. He's the weatherman now.
Yeah.
Paul something.
Paul Higgins, I think.
Paul Higgins.
We'll go with that.
Loved him on BTN.
Has he passed away?
No, still doing the weather.
Oh, well, there you go. I know Paul Lynham's passed away, unfortunately. And you had also Earl McFeast and Roy in HG, Stuart Littlemore, Don Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what also makes this a product of its time is that these days the ABC they've moved up one. They're usually number 3.
Yeah.
Usually it's Channel 10 that's number 4 now.
And also the funny part of this thing is the joke of the ABC, which is like, and you know, this scintillating programming, and then it cuts to like a church sermon and sheepdog trials. And what else is there? There's like bananas in pajamas.
Yeah, touted as groundbreaking drama.
Dad's Army.
Yes, Dad's Army.
British comedy.
Yeah.
Where it's like now the ABC is so much more groovy.
All right, after the opening titles that look a little bit more refreshed, we have Tony and Mick presenting, and they decide to mix things up a little bit because they're going, hey, it's a new look late show. And what's the change? They switch places. Ooh, daring. But also...
And they get to do it on a brand new retina-burning red and orange set.
Yeah, I love the set though. I love those floating floorboards and the plantation shutters. Like it does kind of make it look homely and
the irregular chairs as well. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, sort of like compared to season 1, which was sort of bluey green and a lot larger and sort of a bit colder, really. Yeah. Like season 2 compared to season 1, it's a lot more. That they've shrunk the size of the stage by the looks of things to make it more intimate.
Yeah.
Their clothes are still as baggy as ever, though. They may have upgraded to maybe a silk shirt, but they're still very 90s.
It's amazing what a year does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like basically it's been about 6-7 months since the end of season 1, don't forget.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? They started about a month earlier because season 1 they started in July, so season 2 they started in June. So after giving a bit of a tour of the floor plan, really, and also a very dated Mary McKillop joke.
The first of many Mary McKillop jokes from Mick Malloy, in there's going to be more later in the series.
Yeah.
And it's only somebody like Mick who can get away with that sort of joke, saying that Mary McKillop has a small tattoo of a scorpion just above the bikini line.
But
if anyone's going to know, it's Mick Malloy.
Exactly.
But they do have a new cast member, which Tony does refer to at the very intro of the opening titles.
An old showbiz buddy of ours. Please make her welcome Miss Judith Lucy.
Look at that. Cute as a button. I know.
Nice Vizard ripping there.
Oh, I love the introduction of Judith.
Yeah.
And my favourite line is when she goes, well, it's not Barrel Girl on Pluck a Duck, Tony.
Yeah.
And they do say that Judith has gone through various testing through the Late Show Institute just to make sure that she is worthy of her spot on the cast and crew, really.
That really made me laugh. Like, I love the attention to detail. Like, there's this Dymo label that just says anal humour that they've stuck on an O2 Sats machine. And it just would have been, if you were in the hospital that day when that was being shot, you would have just been, what is this?
How was everyone's reaction to seeing Judith? I know my friends and I were horrified. Who is this stranger who's infiltrated the Late Show? Jane is only the only woman who was meant to be there. It took a while for us to get used to the idea of this change, this Judith arriving. Who was this stranger? And we just wanted things as they were, the old Late Show. It did take a while for us, admittedly, to get used to Judith being around, but she did grow on me.
Yeah, she doesn't do, in this episode, she doesn't do a whole heap of stuff. Like, she has a couple of little bits where she does things, but I think it did take us a few weeks to get to understand where she was coming from. And I remember being hooked quite quickly on her, you know, once I sort of got the level she was working on. But in this first week, you're sort of like, okay, who's this? This is a bit weird, you know.
I was really excited about it. I think, you know, she'd been on the big gig a bit and I loved her there. And although around this age I wasn't a huge, like, stand-up audience member because it was sort of, you needed to go to pubs and be 18 and stuff. But I went to sort of PG-rated stuff like the Secret Police Woman's Ball at the Athenaeum. And I can't remember if she was there, but I know I saw her live a few times and she was amazing. So for me, it was just really exciting. But I remember a lot of people being weird about it, and that was a shame because she was ace.
Certainly my impression just on the first episode alone is that she does seem to be like the female counterpart to Mick Malloy, just about, especially with one of her, it's almost like a monologue that comes later on in the episode. And she really does, you know, bring her own sort of flavour to the group.
But I will say there was a little fat kid from Hey Dad reference thrown in there too.
Yes.
Oh, now also there was a reference. They wanted to see whether Judith was funny away from the group, so they basically tailed her and showed her like a almost telephoto style going into a place called Dickie and John's Crazy House. Does anybody know?
So funny. I have no reference to that, what that was. That is so trapped in the 90s. Like, it does not exist now.
I was going to ask whether anybody knows the venue or Dickie or John.
Absolutely. Yes, I do. I know them quite well. I was the bar manager at Dracula's Cabaret restaurant for a very long time.
Amazing.
And they were the owners. So Tiki and John had the Crazy House, and they're originally Tiki and John's theatre restaurant, which was the first cabaret restaurant in Melbourne, and their children started Dracula's Cabaret restaurant.
Oh my God!
Oh wow!
Cafe Nocturne, I think it was in the city, which was an old bar that used to have people like Nick Cave used to hang out and all that sort of thing. So yeah, Tiki and John's restaurant was actually on Russell Street, I think it was. It's where the 1806 the cocktail bar is in the city now in Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
And so their kids had Dracula's, which I worked at, and Tiki passed away a few years ago, but John's still going. He's 90s, I think, now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Justin, that's amazing history. Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's a funny one.
We
that
didn't
came
have a
up,
whole
so I
other
just happen to have
podcast about
an insight into that one. So anyone who came through Dracula's back somewhere between 2006 and 2014, I no doubt made your drinks or probably served you at your table.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
That's cool. Anyway, it's time for the news desk.
And now it's over to the news desk with Tommy G.
He's now got a new intro. But instead of the summary things as we usually go through in season one, I'm just only going to point out ones that there'll be obvious jokes later on, so I'm just going to skip those bullet point ones and go straight into the news. So the Australian economy has been hitting a record low, and John Dawkins at the OECD meeting in Paris, Senator Evans, Gareth Evans, which is Rob, does his great little head wobble again. That's all back. So he's there to try and sum up all the international events. So him and Tommy just rattle off a couple of things like the banning of the 3 Northwest flights in the airline wars. And only Evans did that because the stewardess ignored him 3 times after pressing the button.
And didn't he have to watch Yahoo Kelly 3 times?
Oh, Reckless Kelly, yeah. Don't laugh. I actually got a copy right behind me right now.
I know you do.
Yeah.
He does a bit where he extends the whole head wobbling kind of amusement to be a sort of fly catcher, which is sort of slight reference to Karate Kid, I think, which is rather nice. And towards the end of it, also suddenly the references change into what's it called? The Get Smart. So you suddenly get references to chaos and spies, and then the finale is he answers a phone call on his shoe. So this is quite the one for pop culture fans. Quite typical of the Late Show. They can't really be bothered with doing hard satire, so they just reference old telly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next time we better use the cone of silence.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But when he says they're going to serve Big Ben pies, what the hell? Is this about to be referenced by Tom in the news article coming up?
I'd say so. I'd say there'll be that reference.
Right.
Yeah, with food contamination down the track.
Right.
So, but after that, in America, Bill Clinton gives a fiery reception when visiting Washington on Memorial Day.
To all of you who are shouting, I have heard you, I ask you now to hear me.
Such a funny guy.
And that's a running joke.
Yeah. And there's the product recall about the pies recalled due to contamination because they could have possibly meat in it. And Tommy G demonstrates what's actually in the pie and what to look out for.
And it looks like it's full of green slime that you used to buy from Toy World.
There's obviously some peas mixed in with it as well because it's a bit chunky.
And then Tom gets to put in a very traditional jab saying that it can go back to the canteen. That seems very old school to me, and that seems like something that they'd be saying on IMT, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
TV news where there's a community welfare group that has released an ad showing a vigilante gang driving the streets to shoot up street kids. I couldn't find this ad on YouTube. But I remember seeing it and briefly, and it never showed again because people complained about it. And the sequel was in the works to round up and shoot Volvo drivers. And other news, well, you said South Australia wins the State of Origin, but that doesn't make sense.
The Melbourne Guide had the game starting at 8:30 at night, but I don't know whether that was live or not. I don't think it would have been because there probably would have been rules, because it was played at the MCG, there probably would have been rules that they couldn't show the game live because they wanted people to go to the venue.
But they had footage of a bunch of team players going through prenatal classes, which was just them stretching. And SBS shows off their dodgy state-of-the-art studio. And the Late Show video goes on sale in Iraq at the ABC's shop, yeah.
As Tom says right after that, that's a pathetic plug.
Yep.
Yeah, but a very necessary one if they want to get money in.
And there's a reference to sport, more sport talk, where Queensland wins third State of Origin clash, and then they showed a clip of Benny Elias being crash-tackled at the airport.
That was funny.
I know. That
really happened. He's being interviewed and then someone just grabs him, hooks him around the neck. Is that really something that happened?
Yeah, there was almost no joke required. The footage of Ben Elias getting crash-tackled in an airport lounge at the carousel was just funny in and of itself.
Yeah, I love the way Tommy just slides that in there you go. Just have a bit of that visual, no reference to what happened.
Yeah, and then Tommy talks about cricket and it's more Phil Tufnell bashing. Then they decide to give a cricket score update, but if you're wanting to watch the game later on instead of the late show, look away, and it just shows up a super of get a live tickets on the screen.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah,
I love that. Not that gag wasn't authentic enough because it didn't have "Tip of My Tongue" by Diesel playing underneath, or Madonna, My Baby's Got a Secret, or if you type that phrase, if you don't want to know the score, look away now. There's like about half a dozen examples of that. I know that's really YouTube nerdy, but I had to Google it to see if there was anything like that online. Of course there is.
And advertising news, the New Zealand tourism commercial where an Aussie couple are doing fun activities, and so Tourism Australia try and do the same. They showed some very unflattering results, such as, which still happens today, like everything's overpriced, shit weather, and getting lost.
Waiting for their bag on the carousel for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Paying $2 for the trolley.
That's 1993 prices.
What is it now? $4
now.
I love the male actor in that who just kept swearing his head off. He was great.
Pretty rudimentary filming as well. It probably would have been Santo with a handy cam, with the other two people just going around the airport terminal trying to work out what to do. If they were trying to do that these days, security would be up to them within 5 minutes, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, because of the camera. Yeah, right.
But in '93, they just get to go around and stand in front of the departure tax counter and complain about the $20 they have to pay and say that it's effing fantastic.
Yeah. And now we have the live sketch, which is what the teaser was about. I'm going to stop that.
Prue, you're really getting into it there.
Yeah, well, I watched it, so I have the luxury of enjoying it now.
Ah, yes. Well, that was the theme to Paradise Beach.
90210.
Yeah. And this is where the Late Show does the most priceless live sketch performance ever of the synopsis of Paradise Beach.
What a takedown.
Oh, it was beautiful. So Mick sets it up, and then everything just turns out to be...
Hey, Warner Brothers Movie World!
Excellent.
Although Mick also gets in some great audience work just beforehand, picking out one of the audience members as being more of a Wheel of Fortune man. And
doesn't he look annoyed that guy?
Yeah.
He is not happy, is he, to get, laughed at?
He's so scared. Mick was scared. He was like, oh, sorry, at the end. He kind of apologized for it, didn't he?
But he does look like he wants to punch Mick.
Yeah.
He looks so annoying.
I just joked.
And then saying that another audience member might actually be running around the set in the lolly bags on Paradise Beach.
Yeah.
That's complimentary, I assume.
But that was also the backing of the music, that one song really of Rat Cat Holiday, just on loop.
Yeah.
But I did end up reaching out to someone who worked on the show, and that was TV historian Andrew Mercado. And what was meant to be a 1 minute chat only went for quite a fair bit. So he actually gives a breakdown of how realistic the synopsis of Paradise Beach was. What was your role on Paradise Beach?
I was working for the Queensland Tourist and Travel Corporation in North America when they were selling the shows to American TV stations. They got their syndication deal and sold it in everywhere to play in a US summer and get all of the young American kids hooked onto this new show. And I remember when they put the sales reel together for Paradise Beach, they were using footage from tourism productions, and also they had heavily borrowed footage from the movie The Coolangatta Gold, which was great surf lifesaver footage shot in, 35 or 70 millimeter. It was impressive, and the trailer for it was really impressive. And then, of course, the show went to air, and it didn't look anything like that trailer. And I ended up becoming the location manager on Paradise Beach for about the last 6 months of the second series. But I remember that late show skit very well. Given my role in sort of seeing what it had been promoted as and then watching it go to air, yeah, that Late Show skit really got me in the gut.
Can you explain to us what, for the people who may be too young or just weren't aware of the show at the time, what Paradise Beach was actually about?
Paradise Beach was a show that Channel 9 were screening before their 6 p.m. news at 5:30. The stuff that the Late Show sent up in the skit, I mean, people might watch that skit now and go, oh, wow, they're exaggerating. Look, they really weren't exaggerating. I would say that the first couple of months of Paradise Beach is some of the worst television that's ever been made in the history of Australia. It was really bad. It was kind of cut together sometimes like it was a music video clip. They had hired models and not given them any acting lessons, so the performances were very wooden. And because it was a Village Roadshow production, they had done these they were trying to corporatise the tie-ins. And so when everyone in the Late Show does this thing about, oh, look, there's Movie World Studios, Warner Roadshow Movie World or whatever they say, I mean, that really happened in the first week of Paradise Beach, and it was really clunky. And it was really an example of how not to make a TV show. And the fact that that skit got made and was so accurate as to what had gone to air in those first couple of months of Paradise Beach, it should have been a real wake-up call for them. And I think it was. I mean, they had terrible reviews for the show, and they did then get in acting coaches and start giving acting lessons to the main cast. And I would say to you that the show rapidly improved. But, you know, it was starting at a pretty low base, and it did get much, much better. But it's really hard to ever forget or outlive the opening week's episodes, which are terrible. When you start off bad, there's really not a lot of places you can go to. I thought that it's a real shame that the show got axed when it did, because it's one of the few times in Australian TV history where a show got axed despite its ratings going up. The fact was that Paradise Beach did improve enormously. It was on the up and up, but there was a problem. The problem was that all of these kids were starting to discover it and watching it as what they'd always wanted. But then when 6 o'clock came, they didn't want to watch the news. They switched over to The Simpsons on 10. And Channel 9 then went, oh, well, we've got to get rid of this show and get a show that gets old people watching, like The Price is Right, which is what they ended up axing and replacing it with, so that they don't switch the channel for the news. And you look at that and just go, did nobody at Channel 9 realise that the whole point of making a show called Paradise Beach was to get the kids watching? How did they only realise that 2 years down the track when it was doing exactly what they wanted it to do? I mean, what a dumb decision it was. They shouldn't have made the show if they didn't want kids to be watching something before the news. So it was all a bit of a disaster. But look, I have some really happy memories of those that show. It was a lot of fun to work on.
So, and there's a reason why it's never been rebroadcast in Australia or released on any media platform, at least, because it's something that they weren't too proud of.
Well, look, the problem is that if why not give it a go? I mean, it taps into that 90s nostalgia. There were people who watched the show and loved it who'd want to watch it again. The problem with it would be, though, is that you would have to start with those first episodes, which are really, really bad, and you'd have to kind of churn your way through some really bad episodes waiting for it to get better. And it does get better, but it's whether or not people today have the time with streaming services to sit around. But look, there would be a nostalgic kick to it. There'd be an audience for it. But Village Roadshow TV division seems to have shut down. So I don't think there's anyone in the company anymore that sort of knows about it, remembers it, cares about it, or understands that there's actually a title there that they could maybe see if they could make a bit of money on today. And yet the truth is that when they do put Australian shows online, things like A Country Practice on 7 Plus and The Secret Life of Us on Netflix, they can absolutely go off and kind of tap into this, find a new generation of viewers and people who watched it when they were kids who want to watch it again as adults. There is potential there.
The bit where he talks about how they took Paradise Beach off because people weren't watching Channel 9 for the news just reminded me of why they get this.
Yes.
Because, it wasn't that the show wasn't popular. It was the overall strategy of trying to keep people on the channel or on the station.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so many shows have gone that way.
But it also shows as well that because everything old is pretty much in trend again, so from the 90s with all the box sets and all that coming out, it could be squeeze out Paradise Beach. Probably not Pacific Drive, but Paradise Beach definitely. So
I can't believe you're saying definitely. Like, was it... What? Did you enjoy it?
Well,
briefly.
if there was anybody to put out a DVD box set of Paradise Beach, Andrew Mercado, TV historian, is your man.
Yeah.
He would do a really good job of it. I like that Mick says that it's going to be a brief 2-minute synopsis and then says, I'm specifically talking to you, Robbie.
Yeah.
Yes, and I love that because it really does look like Rob and Santo went off on one with the whole pointing like this and the
at one point you can see the scripts on their laps as well.
Yeah,
they're sitting in a car on stage. There's also Tom as an Iron Man.
Oh, that is glorious.
Oh, God.
And talk about him in the Speedos.
He's
he's so weedy. He's so weedy.
He looks like he's going to tuck in those Speedos.
It's like each one of us all looks like an Iron Man. I know, Tom Gleisner does. Let's pop him in the Speedos.
And then there's also Tony as the important businessman figure talking on 2 phones at once and going over to the fax machine and saying and ending every sentence with the word "damn it."
Damn it.
Sell.
You forgot a couple of classic bits which I adore, which is obviously Judith's blank look to camera is absolutely priceless. But also,
Perfect.
I think Jane has to say the line, "I love being young." Yeah.
Is that Santo?
Oh, was that Santo? Yeah. Sorry, they just all sort of merged together as total crap, really. But it is interesting, this sketch, because this is the kind of sketch that in the first series they would have, gone off on little bits of improv and they would have really messed around with it. But obviously they've sort of been told you got to keep this tight this time. So there's none of that kind of, deliberate mistakes and improv, which is a slight shame, but it's still a great sketch.
Well, they've only got 50 minutes to fill instead of an hour. Because I think part of the reason my conspiracy theory as to why it's 50 minutes in 1993 is that towards the end of 92 they were sort of going past the hour mark and overrunning that much. So I reckon the ABC must have gone, we'll give them 50 minutes and then that way they'll at least get into under an hour if they overrun.
Yeah, it'll be
Good
interesting
theory.
as we keep watching them if they do actually run over. Because I don't remember them being strictly 50 minutes in season 2 at all. I sort of remember that every episode being around an hour. So
Well, this episode was definitely just over 50 minutes.
Yeah, this one was really tight.
Yeah.
But also, this is such a great sketch because who did not go up to Queensland in the 90s and say, hey, Warner Brothers
Movie World.
Hey, Warner Brothers Movie World.
Guilty as charged. Yep, I definitely did that.
We got a quick little produced sketch or commercial, really, of Rob and Jane taking the piss out of Jupe perfume.
and looking very attractive. One does hope that they sort of have a photo collage in their pool room of this scene because
they are getting very, very intimate, aren't they? And any thoughts we had during series 1 that Jane and Tom were the couple are swept away entirely by this, I think.
Yeah, very getting steamy in real life as well as this ad.
And then Mick and Judith ruin it because they get a reality check $65, which is pale in comparison today.
Yeah.
He should have gone to the Chemist Warehouse.
Yeah. Oh, you looked it up too, Daniel. Today's prices.
Get it.
But how's this? One produced sketch straight after another produced sketch, which is the trailer of Indecent Proposal, which is pretty much all about Rob and Jane again, the lovebirds. And
great wig work in this one.
Yeah, and it was Rob who was playing David, which is Woody Harrelson, and Jane playing Diana, which is Demi Moore. And to reveal that it's Ernie Sigley playing Robert Redford. A really, really decent proposal.
Do they keep running this joke all the way through the series, or for a while?
I'd say just this episode, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does pop up again later on this episode, and yeah, that cackle is just so lascivious.
And guess what it's time for?
Charlie, we love you.
Yes, if only we had a Piss Week kid for this segment. Episode 1, Run Charlie Run. The Piss Week kids stumble upon smugglers stealing native trees, and it's up to Charlie the Wonder Dog to get word to Gramps to stop the smugglers.
You're making the leap from Piss Week world to suddenly being in this sort of pastiche, if you like, of kids shows like Skippy, for instance. So, like, how was Charlie the Wonder Dog sold to you? It's vastly different to the Piss Week world stuff.
It was pretty much like, we have a script, we'll tell you about it, but we don't really have a script. They're pretty much feeding us the lines as we're going and making it up as they were going along. Again, Santo with a handy cam. That first episode was shot at Rob's brother's house up in Balloongarook, which was out near Gisborne. I didn't realise that Bud was going to be there. We didn't know anything when we got there. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like, you've got to be at this address at this time.
Huh.
Catering, I believe, was drive-through McDonald's on the day. Yeah, like I said, there was no real script on it. It was pretty much just like, let's just sort of go with it. They had a rough idea of the points they wanted to hit and a very, very loose sort of script. Bud would actually handwrite all of his script lines on a little notebook, which is something which I, to this day, any acting job I do that myself. Just as a good way to reaffirm all of your lines and all that sort of thing. You write them out and get it into your head. And it was just great fun to do it. That was the thickest dog I've ever met in my entire life. Lovely, lovely dog. I'm assuming you all know what happened to him in the end, how he died.
Snake?
No.
Snake bite. Yeah, he was bitten by a snake.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
mentioned that.
Lovely dog.
I was pretty sure that, you know, like similar to Graham Kennedy getting asked about the dog that pissed on the camera and him just saying that, you know, like, he's fine for a dog that's, you know, over 30. You know, I obviously we know that he's gone now, but I didn't know that Charlie met his end that way. Wow.
I believe he mentioned it on the panel.
I think he might have at some point. Yeah, he you know, I spoke to Tony a couple of years back, and he was saying that he mentioned Charlie dying, and he sort of stuffed it up, and people had all assumed that it was Charles Bud Tingle at the time and not Charles Bud. So, yeah, I think that's something along those sort of lines. But, yeah, a great series to shoot. The other supporting actors there were James Wright and Terry Gill, who were the smugglers, and they popped up again in several other episodes.
Yes. As sort of various bad men.
Yeah, and all of the costumes they got for those guys came out of the ABC wardrobe department, and I don't know if any of you guys had ever got a chance to go into that. It was just mental. It was literally all these old, it was like an op shop with just all this great stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s, and they would just go to town with some of the hats, and the costumes were just nuts.
They might have had some front bottom costumes in there.
And they would have, definitely, because, you know, obviously ABC, there was all sorts of weird things in that. And that department was directly across the other side of where the actual studio was where they shot. So for the live stuff, which was really cool. But, yeah, really, really good fun. That was the first one was in the old house up in Balloongarook, which I believe is the same property that they use for the thing that comes up later in the episode with the siege.
Oh, yes.
With the cult thing, which is the same property that they shot it on, which was kind of cool.
So when it will be a weekly filming, obviously, for every episode, because it lasted, I think, was it 9 or 10 episodes for Charlie the Wonder Dog?
Yeah, there's actually 2 episodes, I think, that were never shown that were shot.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know whatever happened to them, but one of them involved stealing native birds. and all of the birds were actually taxidermy birds that were just sitting on a branch. They were literally just picking off the branch and putting it into a bag. I don't know whatever happened to that episode, but I'm sure it's been finished and it's out there somewhere. But there was a few things that they did there. But we shot a few of them in a week, I think.
Right.
Well, yeah, like from my count, there's 7 episodes.
Yeah.
So episode 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and then the pseudo finale in episode 10.
Yeah.
And then right at the end of season 2, we've got Charlie, a very Charlie Christmas.
Still makes no sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, like not to spoil it for everybody, but yeah, in the 6th episode, he gets shot, well, assassinated, essentially, sort of almost JFK style. after receiving a bravery medal and Charles Bartingwell saying the immortal line, "He truly is a wonder dog."
Funny story on that. Rob actually asked me to throw the dog out of the car. And Tommy told him, no, you can't throw the dog off the car. It's basically the shooting bit. Like, just push him out. I'm like, no, I'm not throwing the dog out of the car. It wasn't going very fast, but it doesn't.
Did he have Ellie as a backup?
Ellie was the backup. She was the stunt dog. I don't think she ever popped up in it. She was always on set, but I don't think she popped up on any episodes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just quickly talking about the episode itself, sort of, it takes a little bit for the audience to sort of get it, but it's at about the time that you see Charlie being yanked by one of the ropes that the audience really starts to get it. It's probably that, and also when Charlie is leading Gramps, quote unquote, to the children, when really it's more the other way
Charles
around.
is dragging him around.
Yeah,
they sort of see the general crappiness of the series. I mean, was that sort of direction sort of telegraphed to you that sort of like the acting can be good, but you're like, it doesn't have to be Oscar quality. It can be Loki quality, for instance.
There was no expectation on acting in this particular one at all. In fact, it's sort of encouraged to be as bad as possible, and that's why they would barely show us the lines. They're like, there you go, have a look at that. Right, okay, off you go. I'm like, I can't remember what I'm supposed to say next. And that shows a lot.
So I've got a grab here.
Quick, we've got to get a message to Gramps.
So
we got to get a message to Gramps.
There's an absolutely brilliant line. One of the girls says, "It's a stick."
It's a stick.
That's the one. It is so badly acted but brilliantly acted at the same time.
Yeah. There's just, I think one of the other episodes, my brother's saying a line and it's got an underlined thing, simulated acting under it.
Yes. Dead Man's Weir.
It certainly wasn't.
One might. Oh, and actually, it might not be Dead Man's Weir. So I'm looking through the episode list because we had
Mount Variable Weather.
Yeah. Like there's a few of them on the DVDs as well. But yeah, there's Rescue on Mount Variable Weather. There's Charlie as a superstar, trying to save, the mean old neighbour's house from getting bought. There's your tour de force doing the simulated drowning in Dead Man's Weir.
Yeah. You're right, that one still kicks around a fair bit. That was shot at Collingwood Children's Farm. I think I'm just on the Yarra in that particular spot there. Absolutely shocking performance by myself. It was bad all around. But what a great day to film. We had a ball doing that.
So when you went for other acting jobs, Justin, did you have to clarify this was simulated acting?
Are clips of this in your show reel?
Yes.
Excellent.
It's a badge. You've got to have that sort of thing. I've never shied off it. It's not been something I've always brought up, but if anyone ever brought it up with me, I'd always be more than happy to talk about the story. I love being part of the Piss Week kids. It was a great time. I still have that shirt, I think, that green flannelette shirt somewhere. Amazing. Mando shirt.
Did you have to go into any heavy studying with your acting research for Foolhardy Cousin George? How did you play two characters at the same time, Eddie Murphy style?
Well, it had to really draw upon myself most of the time to actually sort of find what my dual personality was actually going to be with Foolhardy Cousin George. I think they got to a point where they were talking about how they had given us all character names, but in the end, they just used our real names anyway. It's like, so I think they originally called me Peter in the show, and it's like, no, they're just going to call me Justin in the end. They didn't really care. But Foolhardy Cousin George was just a great fun character. And there's one line that Laura pulls out in that episode, which is still my favourite line from any of the Charlie the Dog episodes, and it's so subtle you can't hear it. It's almost at the background. She goes, "Wow, it's lucky you turned up to this picnic in a wetsuit." And
So great.
that line still gets me every single time.
Well, as you see on the Late Show Facebook page, people love you guys.
It's quite funny, and I always love talking about when people ask the question too, because it is good fun, and it was a great time in my life anyway, and I really enjoyed being a part of that, and also having a chance to work with Bud Tingwell as well. Like, it was just great. Like we shot everything literally on Santo's Handycam. Rob walking around with a script or half a script or just handwritten notes, and Tommy wrangling the dogs, and shooting where we could when we could, and it was just great fun the whole time. And we were doing one episode, I think, and I ended up in a minibus with Tony Martin in the back of the bus practicing all of his barge ass lines, which was just hysterical.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
You got
some
early
great
barge
memories.
How does this sound? What do you think of this? It was really quite good. It was quite good.
Excellent. So after Charlie saves the day from the smugglers, hooray, Charlie, we love you.
Nice work, Charlie.
Nice work, Charlie.
Cool.
It's acted too well.
All right, we have, after Charlie the Wonder Dog, we now have Judith is on the couch spontaneously talking to Tony and Mick and Jace about what they got up to during the break, and they went, New York, all over Melbourne.
Oh, yeah, I love this sketch. It looks so beautiful.
The reason they do this sketch is because for some weird reason, about a week or so beforehand, the ABC had been massively promoting the fact that they were going to show On the Town, right? On the Town is like a classic film from the 50s, but why they gave it such heavy promotion, I have absolutely no idea. But this was like their Friday night film. We're going to show On the Town. And every time I turned on the ABC in that period, I would just see promotions for On the Town. I was like, this must be like the most brilliant film ever in the world if they're promoting it so heavily. So it was slightly mysterious to me as a sort of 16-year-old. But anyway, yeah. So that's, I think, what inspired this parody. But I love it, they're saying, oh, we're in New York. But they come off the ship, parodying the film, and they're coming off HMAS Brisbane. And then and then the joke being, of course, they're going round and it's Melbourne, and everywhere you go, trams, the Arts Centre, Burke Street Mall, Flinders Street, the MCG, places you just, are not in New York. They're still singing the song. And it's great.
Yeah. If you're a Melburnian, there's some really cool bits in this sketch, if you can have a look at it. There's a whole shot of Village Cinema on Burke Street, which is completely gone now. Absolutely gone. And also when they're on Collins Street across the road from the Athenaeum, you can see a Bass box office, which is a ticketing agent that is well and truly gone. Yeah. So there's some really cool bits.
And the old lady applauding at the end when they end up on the steps of Flinders Street Station. And she just assumes they're local buskers or something.
Yeah, it was perfect timing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had no idea of that sort of context as to why they chose to do that song. Because, like, for me, it just sort of seems like there's no context at all. It's just the boys having fun, really. That's all I really see in this that I love about it, is that it's a big bit of fun.
But isn't it also like a classic Tony Martin favourite film kind of thing? And also the other thing is the three of them are really great. Like they're kind of doing a dance, and it's just real. They're very good at it.
Yeah, and Mick was really getting into it. He was doing it even after the sketch was over. But I just really like that. And as Daniel said, that was the first time I'd known about that whole song, and not being from Melbourne myself, I don't get all the little details, but I just like the fun and the enthusiasm that they just had Yeah, it's really good.
But that leads into Judith, who decides to do her own thing to prove the worthiness of the show, really, that she can scratch up content. And she goes through the Thrifty Times magazine and jumps straight to the marriage counselling section. And so she waffles on about how there is a family who is doing it tough and there's not enough money to fix the car. So his wife nagged him and he killed her. And so... it was quite a bit of a dark little rant, wasn't it?
Welcome to Judith Lucy's comedy.
Yes.
That's right.
I think this is the other reason why people didn't quite like her particularly at first, is because, you know, it's not just that she's new, it's not just that she's a woman who's saying stuff. She's being really, really feminist and political, and that gets a lot of people's backs up. And I remember the reaction, particularly amongst or boys of my age at the time, was they absolutely hated her. And this is an example of the kind of material they hated, which was, I suppose, against their gender, I suppose.
Yeah, I remember around this time, I wouldn't kiss a boy if he didn't like Judith Lucy. That was my benchmark.
Wow.
Good criteria.
Yeah.
Good criteria.
Well, anything that'll help try and promote Judith Lucy on the Facebook page, it gets responses from the ones who don't like feministic.
It's the whole spectrum, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
It's really it just shows how little has changed in all that time, and this is very timely. What she's talking about is just so relevant today.
Yeah,
the actual issue was about this judge that had said in court that no can sometimes mean yes, and that was just like, you know, I remember because I was in year 12 at the time, and we had to do all the analysis articles on that, but it was just outrageous that was a thing that was being said in court. It was devastating, and really, we haven't come a long way.
I'm just amazed that such dark material about the husband killing his wife was in such a light magazine as Thrifty Times, the magazine that saves you money.
Yes. With headlines such as cold in winter, wear a jumper.
But that does lead into a really odd commercial. But as you've said, Prue, this is what it was all about. And they somehow seg it into McDonald's promoting McJustice Day.
And there's also a very noticeable edit in Rob's voiceover between the words McJustice and Day, like the name might have had to have been edited out at the last second, those pesky lawyers again.
So that could be why, they gone, all right, if you do that, then, because it was a very uncomfortable sketch, really, but it was just illustrating that point that Judith was talking about.
But really proving the point, and essentially saying that, you know, every Tuesday at McDonald's, you know, it's where no after a little persuasive handling can mean yes.
Yeah.
And Judith basically being pestered to have fries with that.
And look, we've got another trailer of Indecent Proposal again, with same setup, same people, but this time it's Molly Meldrum as John with a ludicrous proposal. You do yourself a favour.
Yeah. I'm grateful that that Molly and Ernie both said yes to this. I think this might have been the turning of the tide to the Late Show between 92 and 93, in that, you know, people might have been hesitant to go on the Late Show last year, but now that they seem to be comedy darlings, it's sort of, you know, like everybody seems to be saying yes.
Yeah.
Especially to have the piss especially Molly, to have the piss taken out of himself, to have a ludicrous proposal put on, you know, straight after his face is on screen.
Do you sometimes think, you know how in 93 or even, was it later, that people would sometimes pop up on Red Faces, like Rob and Jane were guest judges and stuff. Do you think that there was a bit of tit for tat? Like, if you come on our sketch, we'll come on as a guest judge.
I'd say so.
There probably was. Yeah.
All right. Now we have the sketch, which is a bit of a long one, and that's all about Cliff Thompson being the cult leader, with Mick being Cliff Thompson. So based on the whole Jonestown David Koresh thing, because the Koresh thing only had just happened. So that was still fresh and topical.
And yeah, it was basically taken to very silly extremes with Mecca's Cliff in a very dumb-looking tri-conical
Portchester hat.
Yeah.
That's funny as well.
It's a great hat. I love the hat. I think the hat's probably my favourite bit of the sketch because I feel like the sketch is quite long, I would say, and it's what we were talking about in series 1 about they feel they can do these jokes because of the distance, and whereas these days would be much more sensitive to the fact that actually, is this really a good topic for comedy?
Yeah. It's funny though. It's a great satirical sketch in a way. Like, I think he sums up this whole bullshit of these cult leaders, which is, it was just a great way to pick up chicks or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is essentially what all these cult leaders are on about. So he's nailed it. Like, okay, that's them.
I love the part where they have the ex-cult leaders, Leonie and Dennis, and they were claiming that Cliff really understood the Bible. And after they showed a little bit of his, telling his stories to his fellow followers, then he calls them out saying that his readings did get a bit strange, and then he was going off the Book of Tangles.
And I think that this is what saves it really is the silly jokes in this. You know, the sort of the satire about the cult isn't that funny, but stuff like the real estate sign that says psychotic, 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 and the Blakey impression and the Bruno Lucia impression, and they start playing Achy Breaky Heart to break their spirit and all that. Those jokes are funny, but the sketch overall I think lacks coherence. It's just a series of jokes strung together rather than a coherent whole.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I agree with
My
that.
brothers and I tried to replicate that impression of Peter Russell Clark a fair bit.
Go on.
Dada, it's better.
Laughing as you think about that. Yeah, I agree with Alison. It's quite a long sketch, and then it's just all about those little subtle jokes that they really throw in there, like the winning the toy when they shoot. Just little things like that.
Well, see,
and the whole love boat analogy that Mick has is like, God is Captain Stubing, and he goes on, you're the guy at the bar, and I don't know.
Mick has a fascination with Captain Stubing because that's like the very first episode where he was coming out, the oil spill.
Yes,
yeah, what? And he was saying about Captain Stubing on the Love Boat.
Mick loves the Love Boat, yeah.
He just died, that guy too, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yeah.
Literally like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. At the time of this podcast, okay? So if you're listening like years later, yeah.
But really, how is the Love Boat theory any more or less nuttier than Q?
Exactly.
Really?
Again, nailed it.
Yep. Yep.
And also the other joke was bringing in the West Coast coolers.
Yeah.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Now that's I don't know if you were noticing during Charlie the Wonder Dog, but the plants were being smuggled in a West Coast cooler box.
That's right, the native plants.
There you go.
It's always
Well, that would have been a prop
drink.
left over because it's the same place that we filmed it at.
Oh.
So it's
Someone was drinking it. Was it you,
There you go.
Charlie was all off his face.
Well, you see, my theory was just that West Coast coolers are evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not go near them.
Not disputing that.
Nothing good can come of a West Coast cooler. You're either going to get poisoned or you're going to be smuggling plants.
Yeah, this was a public service announcement to teenagers like myself.
I can't believe it's still on sale. I mean, when you consider that there's all these, craft beers and Alco Pops and stuff like that, why are people still buying West Coast Cooler?
Yeah. I once worked with a girl who legit loved them. Still drinks them to this day.
Wow.
Keeping them in business then.
And I just want to say hello to our new sponsor, West Coast.
Now, also, Australia's Funniest Home Video Show gets a nice little kicking in this a couple of times as well. Especially with the conceit that you'll drop your baby on its head to win a JVC camcorder.
That was classic Tony.
Yeah, but I love the which is a couple arrested with this video on their possession.
with the comedy company Who's Responsible Baby. I don't know what the name of that baby is, but the one from the comedy company, The Puppet.
we've got a fresh new toilet break now. Yes, it is
Oh,
from,
David Ty.
yeah, the archives of Potluck. And yeah, David Ty, what a guy. Like, I even tried to find him online, but his
Yeah.
name is so generic. It was coming up.
He's a majestic prince, this man. I love everything about this. Okay, in June 1993, I was pissing myself like a loon at this guy, being just casually racist about it. But now I look on it and I think, amazing. The whole thing is incredible. The singing, the dancing, the karate, that costume.
Yeah, you can tell that David's quite the fan of Michael Jackson, I think, with the hat on and off and
Elvis as
And
well.
Bruce Lee as well.
He almost gave himself whiplash.
Oh, have you got Bernard King's commentary on David Ty? Because just
please.
unedited.
He's so scathing on this. Have a listen.
Yeah.
Very difficult to decide if there's a future for this kind of work. In that opening little spin routine, you almost gave yourself whiplash. I thought that was such a surprise to you. And the dear little dance in the middle with karate kicks as well. What a combination of ideas. Perhaps your work would be better in chorus. Perhaps if you were to join a huge chorus. 20 to 30,000 chorus. Singing-wise, you're not exactly the most enchanting experience I've had, but dance-wise, you're disastrous. 15 for Bert.
Amazing. And he's simply pissing himself, absolutely losing it.
I can't
So
wait for... Yeah,
What was the original score out of? So it was 15 out of
100.
100.
Wow.
That's pretty low. I remember Potluck because when I was home from school during the holidays or off sick, that would be on TV. And so I was so excited to see Potluck shown at the toilet breaks. And that was only about 6 years prior. It seems like when you watched it at the time that it was decades old, but it was
It was about 87, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So, I used to watch it on school holidays as well. And the concept was basically there's a whole audience full of potential contestants and which ones actually appear is potluck. They kind of literally draw them out of a hat or something like that. And then they have the celebrity judges. I think they've always got Bernard King, but they have people, I think Bert Newton was on it. I think Ann Wills was on it, everyone's favourite Adelaide personality. Various people like that came on to be judges. And yeah, you never knew who was coming up next on the show, which is why you got such a wide variety of talent.
Unprepared, unrehearsed talent.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love the way that Tony Martin introduces us to the concept, because he asks the audience, "Do you remember potluck?" And not a response.
And the chastising. You remember potluck? Yes.
but yeah, he goes through it. It was in 1987. It was hosted by Ernie Siegley, 1 hour talent show, Monday to Friday, Channel 10. You remember, don't you? And then throws in that it's not to be confused with Pot of Gold, quote, "It's poor cousin, I assure you," unquote. so he really sells it. And then, David Ty comes on, and, I think everybody remembers Potluck once they see David Ty.
Well, I did put the call out on Facebook. If anyone has any connection or any type of loose connection, whatever, I can always try and dig. Reach out to us, champagnelateshow@gmail.com, and we'll love to have them on the podcast just to talk about their time on Potluck. And I already have the connection for Piffy the Bell Ringer in a future episode, so all is good there, as well as Michael Warren, who's sings "Daddy Don't You Cry." So yeah. So I've already got 2 so far. Anyone else? I've put out the Spangles, the Nelligan sisters.
The Nelligan! If we could get the Nelligan sisters on,
that would be gold.
I reckon our white whale would be Razia.
Oh, Razia, of course. The exotic dancer.
Razia is coming.
Yes. honestly, it's not to make fun of. It's just to realize that you guys and girls have got a fan base out there, and we'll love to know what it was like and to have a resurgence. Kim Wilson might be a hard one, but we'll see.
Similar to what we've done with Justin here, we want to find out about your experiences on Pot of Luck, and maybe find out, what reactions happened when you were shown on The Late Show a second time. Whether you've been stopped in the street and going, oh, you're that guy that was on The Late Show. And we would really love to hear from you.
I just want to highlight Bernard's amazing comment, which was, what a combination of ideas.
Yes.
I want that on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And for those of you who want to know more about Potluck, there is an unofficial Potluck archive online that hasn't been updated for about 11 years. It's at potluckarchive.wordpress.com. And there's in the About section, it says, Potluck is arguably best remembered for Bernard King, the flamboyant celebrity chef whose acerbic feedback was served up on a bed of sarcasm. Occasionally, when Bernard felt the contestant had talents outside of those on display, Bernard would lightly drizzle a sickly sweet jus over the top. I think we'll see that with Piffy a bit later.
Yeah. It's time for...
Well, it's take the pressure down. It's so...
Graham and a Colonel.
I don't.
Such an amazing impression.
Yeah, I don't blame them for referencing, because they can't believe, we can't believe what we've just seen, and they can't believe it either.
Yep.
So of course they're going to reference it and do the hat moves.
They're both so funny, the way they just sort of mirror each other, and they're doing the hat moves and the kicks.
I love that when they were talking about the 40-hour famine. And
and Santa's clearly eating something.
That was brilliant.
I'm as full as a cook.
Yeah. But yeah, they obviously talk about sport. Gee, I wonder why. But they're talking all about the Ashes Australian tour. I just love the fact that they do reference Richie Benaud, where the Colonel actually goes to the same place where he gets his hair done.
Gets his hair tinted.
Tinted, that's the word, yeah. But yeah, they're talking about how much the Ashes were a very, very sacred ornament. And so Graham does explain what the Ashes was all about.
What's the story behind the Ashes, Graham?
Well, interesting you ask that. It's after a test loss in 1877.
Last century.
That's right. They took the middle stump that was used in that game and they burnt it, the middle stump.
Yeah.
And they got the ashes and put it in that urn.
What's that? What's the rattle?
That's stump can. They're not,
But Tish. It was one of the funniest sports jokes I've ever heard. Me personally.
And then they open up the Ashes urn, and we actually see the stump camera still works, which is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
I love that ridiculous comment that Santo makes. The last century.
There's also the French Tennis Open, and Steffi Graf takes number one. Monica Seles failed to appear because, she was unfortunately stabbed in the back. But, because of that comment, I looked it up on YouTube, the original game, and oh, goodness, I've only seen news clips where they only show a tiny little bit, but the full game is on YouTube. And wow, it gives you just goosebumps that it happened.
That was another dark sexist.
Yes.
Because everyone hung it on Monica Seles like she fucking deserved it or something. It was awful.
No.
Everyone was so mean to her. But anyway, back to Graham and the Colonel.
Exactly, yeah.
There's quite a dark comment in Graham and the Colonel, and it's like, I don't know why I did it in reference to the stabbing of Monica Seles. It was either her or Wally Mercer. I hate them both. And I'm like, what?
Whoa.
He really turned on this whoa.
It's verging on trolling just about, and just trying to elicit a response from the audience.
And also over summer, they were not, when they weren't donning the green jackets, they were over at SBS. Sorry, there's a Flummox reference as well, so that goes on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
And they do end up playing a clip of Graham and the Colonel pretty much talking in Italian. Oh, that was it.
Yeah,
right?
and they reference the Richie Richardson hats in their summer
do.
stint
The big props.
at SPS. They're drinking Italian wine, they're speaking Italian, and they're saying, blah, blah, blah in Italian. Richie Richardson hats, keep going in Italian. It's great. Good fun.
And then end with the second worst Maradona joke after Maradonuts from Santo Sam and Ed.
Yeah.
In bed with Maradona.
Right. Well, after Graham and the Colonel is the closing, and Jane actually talks about how the ABC decided to hold a press launch to celebrate the return of the Late Show, and so the list of people who actually turned up in a very piss week style. Sorry, no pun intended there. It was just
That's fine. No offense to that. That's fine.
Well, they had the guy from the ABC Credit Union, the head of ABC Publicity, who's like this octogenarian, the reporter from Attitude. Do you remember that TV show?
Attitude, yeah.
I don't.
Which was just a baby.
It was like Young Current Affairs or something, wasn't it?
I'd say so, yeah. Don Lane, who looked flummoxed, as well.
And then takes Jane out the back to talk about the good old days.
Yeah. That was wrong.
Yeah. And also D-Gen mate of the guys, Laurie Zion, who was part of ABC Radio National, having a chat to Tony. So that was
that was funny because that's actually legit footage. Kim, do you still have was it the Rolling Stone or Who magazine? But there was a really big article that Laurie Zion did on the D-Gen, and it was one of the best interviews that had been done at the time, and it had heaps of really cool photos.
Oh, that's Juice Magazine, isn't it?
The Juice Magazine. Yeah, Juice Magazine. I do have that somewhere, yes.
So yeah, I've got it somewhere as well.
And it was all that background photography about what they were doing at the time. It was really detailed. I ended up subscribing to that magazine as a result because I was really impressed by that. Got a free Hottest 100 Volume 1 CD with my subscription.
Wow.
That's probably a collector's item right now because I know that they reissued Volume 1 with a couple of different tracks. I think the reissue doesn't have the number one of that year, which was Asshole by Dennis Leary.
Oh, I do have the original because when I was subscribed to the magazine, I got a copy of the CD for free and it actually had like a sample sticker on it as well. So maybe it is a collector's item. Yeah. Interesting.
Then in the Late Show launch, they have, was it the head of the ABC or something, and he comes on and he says, well, I'm actually more of a Dad's Army man, So another reference to Dad's Army there.
And again, another really swift kicking to the hand that feeds them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Philip Brady, Celebrity Stooge, was there.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much the ninth member of the Late Show, pretty much.
And Andrew Denton's jacket. Which makes it a future appearance down the track.
They had a very optimistic initial list of people if you freeze frame the list of the name tags for the people being invited. So you had Michael Jackson twice for some reason, Elizabeth Taylor, Jennifer Kite, you had Richard Wilkins, Paul Keating, Jan Event, Bert Newton, etc. So yeah.
But also a few people that were on the crew of the Late Show was snuck in there. So you had Alf Camilleri, who was on props, Annie Marver, who was second assistant director from memory, director Ted Robinson didn't even show up to the launch.
All right. Well, after a live cricket update, just to prove that they were broadcasting live, the musical finale has started with, has come into this season, I should say, which is a best way to wrap up any type of show with a musical performance. And they were meant to get, well, Mick was told to get Van Halen because they were in town, but guess who they got instead?
Now, Sid, I haven't got a band, but I've got a comb and a tissue paper. That's just what we need, Sid, because we're going to do a bit of a Van Halen. Do you know any Van Halen? Who? Van Halen. Do you know Jump? What's he do? Jump. Do you know... This is just turning into red faces at a rapid rate of knots, isn't it? Do you know Jump? It's Van Halen. It's just raw rock power. And you say the word jump every now and then. It's an animal I want. That's the kind of thing we're chasing. 8 cents a day coming your way.
Sid Halen from A Country Practice. So
dressed in the chef's outfit, of course.
Cookie.
And he's really showing his vaudeville roots, which I think you unearthed, Matt.
Yeah, the Sunny Side Up.
Yeah.
which was, I think, like episode 15 or 5. It was like in season 1 where it was a really odd episode of The Late Show, and they did play some minstrel type routine.
Material, yeah.
Then he ended up performing these songs from Van Halen. So it actually goes for a bit, but I summed it down to a quick little montage. That was his first attempt at jump.
Panama! Jump, jump, Panama! Panama! Jump, jump, Panama!
Great, fantastic, Sid. Now, Crittenden, why can't this be love for us?
Why can't this be love? Why do you keep interrupting?
Now,
Also, can I mention before he starts playing his instrument, he reaches round and gives himself a really big scratch in the bum, right? and you can see Jane on the couch, who gets full view of that, just going and like leaning off to the side. Very funny.
The fact that is when he came out on stage and he went to shake Tony's hand, and then he ended up taking off his ring, which is more a visual joke.
Yeah. Oh, a bit of a gag there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was pretty drunk, yeah? Like, that's, I think that's pretty sad.
Oh, was him who drank the West Coast coolers.
What Matt played there, what was actually broadcast was longer than what Matt played. So, be thankful because, it was all right, but I think Sid Halen sort of proves why they didn't have a lot of live performances for these musical finales throughout season 2, really.
Yeah, it was a bit cringy.
But you do realise that Sid actually had released an album too.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure he did.
Yeah.
You sure it was just the one? Wasn't
No, it was called Cookie. Yeah, there's all these tracks. Paper Doll, Don't Bring Lulu, Bloody Bonza Mate, Nobody Sweetheart. Now, there's a track called Wandon Valley. And if you there's Woolloomooloo. And if you follow Oskitch on Twitter, then they actually tweeted a commercial for it a while ago. Yeah,
wow,
that's a legit album.
I'm quite thankful that they started doing the musical finales for this second season, because I think it's a better way to end an episode rather than the, good night, good night Australia, see you next week, run the credits, that's it.
And the whole thing with the records, it was kind of fun, but it was also something that was poorly executed almost every time. It was like they were running out of time.
That's right.
They didn't have enough time for the records, and so this is a much better way.
Well, speaking of the rolling credits, Justin, do you know why that the guys always... Sorry, when I say guys, I meant the entire cast and crew, or the credit writers. They only refer to the Pissweek Kids as the Pissweek Kids and not yourselves individually?
I'm not quite sure what the reason was in the beginning of it, but I think about halfway through they actually did change it and put our names in there towards the end of the season 2.
Yeah.
So our names did pop up at the end. But to begin with, it was just the Pissweek Kids. I think they just undervalued us at the time, I think. I don't know. It was that generic for what it was. It was absolutely fine.
They wanted to protect you from any blowback from the audience. Imagine if you had Twitter back then, you would have been savaged.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt about that.
Oh no, I think you were loved at the time. No savaging.
I'd have sent you a positive tweet.
Yeah, me too.
I did get fan mail, which was quite funny at the time.
Oh,
hello.
It was
Any interesting offers via the fan mail?
Oh, there was some lovely people who sent like nice letters and just almost wanted to be pen pals the whole time. This was back 1993 at the time, but we'd get a few letters, which was kind of fun back then, actually.
Nice.
Other than associated with Charlie the Wonder Dog sketch and then the Pissweek World sketches, were you a part of any other sketches that maybe didn't make it to air, or?
So there was actually the other Charlie the Wonder Dog episodes that didn't make it. But the first thing I ever shot for them was was like a 7-Up thing where I was playing a young cricketer. I can't remember what it was, but that was the first thing I actually ever shot for them. And then they obviously didn't use it. And then got me back for Piss Week World. And we didn't realise that was going to continue to keep going as big as that actually did. We did the Beatles a Prick.
Yep.
Oh, you were the kids in the caravan.
Oh, yeah. How did it feel falling off the cliff?
Which was season 1, episode 20.
Yeah, that was quite fun. And my 16th birthday, I got a ticket to the last episode. So I was in the audience, and at the end of it, you'll notice that Don Lane sits down in the audience next to Jane, and that's next to me. When you get to that episode, you'll probably notice it. I'll probably do a sneaky wave, I think, at the time. But I copped a lot of shit in the warm-up because Judith did the warm-up, and obviously being a 16 or 15 going to 16-year-old in the audience, she wasn't sure if she could say any bad words and just put a lot of shit on me and then proceeded to use every bad word. I think that I learned some new words that day from Miss Lucy. It was terrific.
I know that I've seen tweets online from Tony or such as yourself, but have you worked with any of the team other than Tony in other future projects afterwards?
No, not really. I was approached at one point about potentially being in the castle, but because I'd worked with Bud, it was not necessarily going to sync up. It might be too obvious that was a connection there. But that was going back a long time ago. And, of course, I worked with Tony. He directed an episode I was in of Upper Middle Bogan. And there was another project we'd worked on, which I'm not sure whether it's ever going to come out or not, but it was like a short film thing where we played brothers, which was kind of weird but kind of fun at the same time. He's very clever to work with.
Daniel, do you have any Easter eggs in the credit? Did you notice anything? I know that Hirsch popped up a lot in the Cliff Thompson sketch and all that. So
yeah, I did forget to mention that, but yeah, he asked a question in the press conference. But yeah, there's no wacky credit for Michael Hirsch anymore come season 2. But there are a couple of things of note. There's a thanks to the Southeastern Private Hospital, proud providers of those satire and anal humour meters. And there's also a thanks to Hungry Jack. So I think that's very, very fitting that the McDonald's McJustice Day sketch was filmed in Arrival. But yeah, nothing else, really.
All right, well, that wraps it up for episode 21. Far out, we made it to 21 episodes. Ooh, and people are still downloading. Kim, you can stop hitting refresh on the download now.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you very much for listening, downloading, and feel free to reach out to us at champagnelateshow@gmail.com or on Twitter @TLSChampagne, or visit our website, champagnecomedy.com, or Facebook, The Late Show, or I'm running out of breath here, or search for the Champagne Comedy Podcast group on Facebook. Just answer 3 questions and you're in. You'll know the answers when you see them, obviously, but got to put them up there because of Facebook's rules. And Justin, do you want people to follow you on Twitter? What's your Twitter handle if you want to give it that?
If you like, it's Jussie Anderson at Twitter, or at Jussie Anderson, I guess, JUSSYANDERSON.
There you are. And so if you start getting Charlie the Wonder Dog tweets, we apologise.
It's fine.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin, and also TV historian Andrew Mercado. Thank you very much, Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Prue for returning.
Thanks, guys. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of it, Justin. And yeah.
All right. I'm Matt, and thanks for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast. Catch you next episode.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
When I'm alone with all the dreams of you that won't come true.
Everybody.
What I do.
Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.